I never thought silence could sound so loud. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the clock, the soft drip of the faucet, all seemed to echo like accusations inside my tiny kitchen. That night, I sat alone at the dining table, staring at the untouched dinner I'd cooked hours ago. The food had gone cold, just like my marriage. My husband, Adrian, was working late again, at least that's what he wanted me to believe. But I wasn't the naive woman I used to be. Not anymore. It started weeks ago. A scent. A simple, misplaced scent of perfume that didn't belong to me. Something floral, expensive, intoxicating. It clung to his shirt like a whisper he forgot to silence. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that he brushed against someone at work. But my heart already knew the truth long before my mind dared to admit it. The lies began piling up like dirty laundry. The late-night messages. The sudden gym sessions. The new cologne. And then, the way he looked at me, like I was a painting he'd grown tired of staring at. That's when Ethan entered the picture. Ethan had been Adrian's friend for years, his closest confidant, his drinking buddy, and, occasionally, the third wheel in our marriage when he stayed for dinner or joined us at weekend barbecues. He was quiet, observant, the kind of man who noticed everything but rarely spoke. His eyes always seemed to say more than his lips ever did. One evening, when Adrian was away on a business trip, Ethan stopped by to return some tools he had borrowed. He stood at my doorstep, rain dripping from his hair, holding a small metal case and an awkward smile. "Didn't mean to bother you," he said softly. "I was just passing by." Something in his tone told me he wasn't. I invited him in. Maybe it was loneliness, maybe curiosity, or maybe I just needed someone to see me. To really see me, beyond the role of the quiet, loyal wife who never asked too many questions. We talked about simple things at first. Work. Weather. The house. But then the conversation took a turn neither of us expected. "I know what he's doing," Ethan said suddenly, his voice low, almost guilty. I froze. My fingers tightened around my cup. He looked at me then, directly, without hesitation. "Adrian isn't at a business trip, Mia. He's been seeing someone. I thought you should know." The world seemed to tilt. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I wanted to scream, deny it, accuse Ethan of lying. But the look in his eyes wasn't one of malice. It was pity. "Who?" I managed to whisper. Ethan hesitated. "Someone from his office. Her name's Clara." The name felt like poison on my tongue. Clara, the same woman who'd texted Adrian weeks ago about a project proposal. The same one who smiled too wide when she came by our house last spring. My chest tightened. The truth was there, sharp and unrelenting. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Ethan took a slow breath. "Because you deserve better. And because I've seen the way he treats you. You deserve to know what's really happening." That night, after Ethan left, I sat on the floor of our bedroom with my back against the wall, scrolling through Adrian's messages, looking for confirmation. My hands trembled as I opened his phone, the one I'd memorized the password to long ago. There it was. Message after message. Her name. Their laughter. Their secret plans. "Next weekend can't come soon enough. I miss your touch already. She suspects nothing." Every word was a blade. Something inside me broke, but not the way you might expect. I didn't cry. I didn't throw his phone. I didn't even call him. Instead, I felt a cold, quiet stillness take over me. The kind that comes before a storm. That was the night I decided I wouldn't be the victim anymore. For days, I pretended nothing had changed. I smiled, cooked his favorite meals, and asked about his day like the loving wife he thought I was. All the while I planned, I watched, I waited. And Ethan, he became my silent ally. He checked in often, sometimes under the guise of returning a book or fixing something around the house. Each time, his eyes searched mine, as if asking whether I was okay. One afternoon, I found myself telling him everything. How Adrian used to make me feel special, how the laughter had faded, how I'd slowly become invisible. Ethan listened without judgment, his hands folded, his gaze heavy with understanding. "Mia," he said quietly, "sometimes the only way to make them see what they've done is to show them what they've lost." His words echoed in my mind long after he left. Show them what they've lost. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Adrian decided to host a small get-together at our house. Just a few close friends, he said. Clara wouldn't be there, but I suspected she was the reason behind his sudden enthusiasm. Maybe he wanted to prove something. Maybe he wanted to test me. Ethan was on the guest list, of course. That evening, I dressed differently than usual. A silk dress Adrian had once called too revealing. My hair down. Red lipstick. Not for him, but for myself. For the first time in a long while, I wanted to feel alive. The party started slow. Laughter, clinking glasses, polite conversation. Adrian played the perfect host, charming and smooth, as if the secret affair didn't exist. But I saw the flickers, the nervous glances, the way he checked his phone, the guilt hiding behind every smile. At one point, Ethan and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen. The noise from the living room felt distant, muffled. "You look different tonight," he said softly. I smiled faintly. Different good or different bad? Different powerful. For a moment, our eyes met, and something unspoken passed between us. Understanding, compassion, maybe even attraction.
But it wasn't about that. It was about control.
About reclaiming something that had been taken from me. Later that night, as the guests began to leave, Adrian's attention drifted, as usual, to his phone. He didn't even notice when I walked toward Ethan, my hand brushing lightly against his arm as I thanked him for coming. It was a simple gesture, innocent to anyone watching, but I knew Adrian saw it. Out of the corner of his eye, I saw the flicker of jealousy, confusion, and maybe even fear. For the first time, I had the power. When the last guest left, Adrian turned to me, his smile forced. What was that about? I tilted my head. What was what? He hesitated. You and Ethan. You two seem close. I smiled, just enough to unsettle him. Maybe I was just showing him what he wanted to watch. He froze. What's that supposed to mean? I walked past him, my heels echoing on the floor, my pulse steady and calm. Maybe one day you'll understand. That night, as I lay beside him in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something had shifted. The guilt was no longer mine to bear, but I had only just begun. The morning after the party, the sunlight felt too bright, intrusive, almost judgmental. Adrian was already gone when I woke up, his side of the bed cold and perfectly made. But the faint scent of his cologne lingered, mixed with that same floral note that didn't belong to me. It was the smell of betrayal, sweet and nauseating. I brewed my coffee slowly, deliberately, as if the ritual could somehow calm the storm that had started to build inside me. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, sharper, colder. There was no trace of the woman who used to wait by the door for her husband's return. That woman had been replaced by someone who had finally stopped begging for answers and decided to create them instead. Ethan called that afternoon. His voice was careful, as if afraid of stepping on broken glass. "Are you all right?" he asked. A pause. I could hear the distant hum of cars behind him. "Yes," I said. "Actually, better than all right. I could tell something shifted last night," he said quietly. Adrian looked off. A small, humorless laugh escaped me. "He's not used to losing control." "You made him wonder," Ethan said. "That's a good start." I closed my eyes, letting the words sink in. A good start. That night, I began to plan something that would force Adrian to see what he had turned me into, something he couldn't ignore, couldn't explain away, couldn't delete like one of his messages to Clara. Over the next few days, I became the perfect actress. I smiled. I cooked. I listened. I played the role of the forgiving wife so convincingly that even I almost believed it. Adrian, relieved by my apparent indifference, began to relax again. He stayed out late, but now he didn't bother to hide it. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't watching him anymore. I was studying him. Every lie, every pause before he spoke, every nervous glance at his phone. It was all information ammunition. And then there was Ethan. He had become my only point of honesty in a world of deceit. We'd meet sometimes at a quiet cafe near the edge of town, not as lovers, but as allies. There was a strange safety in his presence. He didn't judge or push. He simply saw me. The broken parts, the fire underneath, the version of me Adrian never cared to notice. One evening, I told him what I was planning. I don't want revenge for the sake of hurting him, I said, stirring my coffee. I just want him to face what he's done. I want him to see me for once, the way I see him. Ethan studied me for a moment, his brow furrowing. Mia, just be careful. When you play with control, it's easy to lose it yourself. I smiled faintly. Maybe losing control is what I need. It started small, just enough to plant seeds of doubt in Adrian's mind. I began going out more often. New dresses, subtle makeup, perfume. When he asked where I was going, I'd simply say, out. No explanations, no excuses. I watched the confusion flicker behind his eyes, the same confusion I used to feel when he vanished for hours without reason. Then came the little details. The lipstick stain on a coffee mug that wasn't mine, placed carefully where he'd see it. A man's jacket, Ethan's, forgotten on the back of a chair. A soft laugh over the phone when he walked by, though no one was really there. It didn't take long. By the end of the week, Adrian was unraveling. One night, he came home early, unannounced. His tie was crooked, his expression unreadable. He poured himself a drink without saying a word. I pretended not to notice, slicing vegetables at the counter. Finally, he spoke. So, you and Ethan seem to be getting close. My knife paused mid-cut. He's your friend, isn't he? That's not what I'm asking. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes. There was anger there, but beneath it, fear. I thought you trusted me, I said softly, echoing the same words he'd once used when I'd questioned him. He laughed, bitter and sharp. Don't play games with me, Mia. Why not? I asked quietly. You seem to enjoy them.
His jaw tightened.
What's going on between you two? I walked closer, my voice calm, deliberate. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. Maybe I'm just showing someone what they've always wanted to see. His glass hit the counter, hard enough to crack. Don't you dare. I leaned in, close enough for him to smell the faint trace of Ethan's cologne I'd sprayed on my wrist. Why not, Adrian? You did. The silence between us was suffocating. His breathing grew heavy, his eyes dark with something between anger and regret. But I didn't flinch. I wanted him to feel the weight of every unanswered question he'd ever left hanging between us. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away. The next day, he didn't go to work. He hovered around the house, restless, searching for something. Maybe for the truth, maybe for control. I let him. I wanted him to drown in uncertainty, to taste the same poison he'd fed me for months. That evening, when Ethan stopped by to drop off a folder Adrian had asked for weeks ago, the tension was palpable. Adrian stood near the doorway, his eyes locked on us as Ethan greeted me politely. Evening, Mia, he said, handing me the folder. Thank you, Ethan. I smiled warmly. You always save the day. Adrian's jaw clenched. Funny, I didn't know you two were that close. Ethan gave him a careful look, not defensive, not guilty, just quietly confident. We've talked a few times. She needed someone to listen. Adrian's face flushed. I can listen. I met his eyes. You could. Once. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The air was thick enough to choke on. Ethan, sensing the storm brewing, excused himself, but before leaving, he looked at me, not with desire, but with something deeper. A silent warning. Don't lose yourself in this. After he left, Adrian turned on me. What's going on, Mia? Finally asking questions, are you? I said, folding my arms. You think this is funny? No, I said, stepping closer. I think it's poetic. His voice cracked. Do you love him? I froze. That question, unexpected, raw, pierced through the armor I'd built. For a moment, I saw the man I once loved standing before me, not the liar, not the betrayer, just a man afraid of losing what he'd taken for granted. But it was too late. Love, I whispered. I don't even know what that means anymore. He stared at me, speechless, before walking away, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. And yet, as I stood there, alone again, I realized something strange. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. The mirror had turned, and for the first time, Adrian was being forced to look at himself. But the game wasn't over. Not yet. Because what came next would change everything, not just between us, but between me and Ethan, too. The house was quieter than ever. Days passed in slow motion, filled with the echo of words I couldn't take back. Adrian barely spoke to me. When he did, it was through clenched teeth or polite distance, as if we were strangers renting the same space. He stopped bringing up Ethan, but I could see it burning behind his eyes. Jealousy, suspicion, guilt. The poison had reached him. But I didn't feel the triumph I thought I would. Revenge had a bitter aftertaste, like ash on the tongue. Every silent meal, every glance across the table, felt heavier than before. We were both ghosts now, haunting the ruins of a love that had once been real. One evening, as the rain beat gently against the windows, Ethan called again. His voice carried a softness that contrasted the chaos I was living in. "Mia, I can tell you're not okay," he said quietly. "You don't have to keep pretending." I hesitated. Pretending's all I've done lately. It's the only language Adrian understands. There was a long pause. "Then maybe it's time you start speaking your own." Those words hit harder than I expected. Speaking my own language, what did that even mean anymore? I had spent so long being the reflection of someone else's expectations, the patient wife, the forgiving woman, the one who stayed. Maybe I was done staying. The breaking point came 2 nights later. Adrian came home early again, unannounced, like he was trying to catch something in motion. I was in the living room, scrolling absent-mindedly through photos on my phone when he appeared in the doorway, his face tight, his eyes hollow from sleeplessness. "I went to see Ethan today," he said. I froze. "You what?" "He was at that garage he manages." I wanted answers. My pulse quickened. "And what did you think you'd find?" "I don't know," he said, voice trembling with restrained rage. "The truth, maybe. Something real in all this madness." I set the phone down and stood, facing him. "And did you?" He took a step closer. "He told me everything. About how you found out about Clara, about what I did." I swallowed hard. "So now you finally know I wasn't blind." Adrian's shoulders sagged. The anger melted into exhaustion. "Mia, I made a mistake. A terrible one. But what you're doing, it's destroying us." "Us," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "There hasn't been an us for months, Adrian. You destroyed that the first time you decided to lie." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "I thought it was just guilt before, but now, I can't stop picturing you with him." "Good," I said softly. "Now you know what it feels like." He stopped pacing, staring at me like I'd slapped him. The silence stretched, thick and painful. "You win," he said finally. "If this was your plan, congratulations. You've broken me." He turned to leave, but I caught his arm.
No, Adrian.
"You broke yourself." I just held up the mirror. For a second he looked like he might cry. But instead, he just nodded, eyes empty. "Then I guess there's nothing left to fix." And he walked out, this time for real. That night, I didn't chase him. I didn't cry. I just sat on the couch, the sound of rain filling the silence he left behind. For the first time in years, I felt still. In the weeks that followed, I lived alone. I thought it would feel like freedom, but it was more complicated than that. Freedom has weight, too, the weight of responsibility, of rediscovering who you are when no one's watching. Ethan stopped by occasionally, not to pry, just to make sure I was okay. He'd bring small things, coffee, books, sometimes just as company. With him, I didn't have to act. I didn't have to be anyone's wife, or anyone's mistake. I could just be. One evening, we sat on the porch as the sun set behind the trees, painting the sky in fading gold. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "He's leaving the city," he said quietly. "Adrian. He told me he can't stay here anymore." I nodded slowly. I figured he would. "He wanted me to tell you he's sorry." I let out a faint breath. Sorry doesn't rebuild what's already burned. Ethan looked at me then, that same steady gaze that had once delivered the truth about Adrian. "So what now, Mia?" I thought about it, about everything that had led me here, the lies, the manipulation, the twisted dance of revenge that had nearly consumed me. I had spent so long trying to make Adrian feel what I felt that I'd almost forgotten what healing was supposed to feel like. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think I'm finally ready to find out." Days turned into weeks, and life quietly began to rearrange itself. I started working again, taking freelance design jobs from home. The house that once felt suffocating slowly began to feel like mine. I repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, removed every trace of the life I had built for someone else. And then one morning, as I stood by the window drinking coffee, I caught sight of something I hadn't seen in months, my own reflection smiling. Not forced, not practiced, real. It was strange how peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly, in the soft moments between pain and acceptance. That evening, Ethan stopped by one last time before leaving for a new job overseas. He stood at the doorway, holding a small brown envelope. "What's that?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Something Adrian wanted me to give you before he left. I think it's closure." I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, shaky. "Mia,
You were right.
I didn't just betray you. I betrayed the version of myself that loved you. Watching you these past weeks that hurt, but it also made me realize something. You've become everything I couldn't be. Honest, brave, free. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope you find happiness, even if it's without me. Adrian." I folded the letter carefully, tears blurring the ink. Not sadness, just release. The kind that comes when a wound finally starts to close. Ethan watched me quietly. "You okay?" I nodded.
Yeah.
"For the first time, I think I am." He smiled, and for a long moment, neither of us said a word. The wind carried the faint scent of rain, the same way it had the night this all began. But this time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something real.